So in the book, Seeking the Heart of Wisdom by Joseph Goldstein and Jack Kornfield, they relate a story about a master who's called to heal a sick child with a few words of prayer. A skeptic in the crowd expresses his doubts about such a superficial way of healing. The master turned to him and said, "You know nothing of these matters. You are an ignorant fool." The skeptic became red and shook with anger. Before he could settle himself to reply, the master spoke again, asking, "When one word has the power to make you hot and angry, why should not another word have the power to heal?" They use this story to talk about the power our speech has and encourage us to look deeply into the energy of our speech. It can be destructive or healing or enlightening. We're asked to let our speech come from our hearts and speak with compassion. Wise speech is one of the virtue practices or Sila practices of the Eightfold Path. And the Sila practices also include right action and right livelihood. It's also one of the 5 mindfulness precepts or trainings that you can take if you decide to make that commitment. Wise speech in Pali is samavoca, is more than just correct, clear speech. It is compassionate communication, really the wholehearted expression of our practice. And just kind of as an aside, when we say something is moral or virtuous, I immediately go to my childhood and commandments. All the thou shalts and thou shalt nots and thou musts and thou must nots. This isn't that. The Eightfold Path are practices that show us a way out of suffering in our lives and the way out of suffering and relief from suffering for all beings, not musts or prohibitions, not things we'll get punished for with hellfire and brimstone if we don't abide by them, but we'll just suffer more. And it's up to us if this practice makes sense. Come and see for yourself. Ahi pasiko. It is always the perspective. So in the Pali Canon, they define the 4 factors of wise speech. Obviously, the first one, speak the truth. Abstain from false speech. Do not deceive or tell lies. Do not exaggerate, minimize, distort. All the things we can do to deceive. Speak the truth. Now that begs the question, well, how do I know what the truth is? Is it my truth? Is it the larger truth? Well, we try to get as close as we can to appreciating reality as it is and the truth in that. And the practices, our mindfulness practices, practicing the Dharma, practicing in Sangha, help us perceive and discern reality a bit more clearly. The second is speaking kindly and gently, refraining from harsh, belittling, judgmental speech, especially that is based in anger. The Buddha said, a person known for gentle and beautiful speech will be quickly trusted and accepted. And I found this lovely poem by George Washington Langford called Speak Gently. And I didn't know who George Washington Langford is, so I looked him up. And there's not much about him to be found out. He lived in the mid 1800s, and this poem was found in many hymnals of the time. And that's about all anything knows about him, except that he spent some time in India. And this is, I think, a poem that addresses speaking gently. Speak gently. It is better far to rule by love than fear. Speak gently. Let no harsh words mar the good we might do here. Speak gently to the little child. Its love be sure to gain. Teach it in accents soft and mild. It may not long remain. Speak gently to the aged one. Grieve not the careworn heart. The sands of life are nearly run. Let such in peace depart. Speak gently, kindly to the poor. Let no harsh tone be heard. They have enough they must endure without an unkind word. Speak gently to the erring. Know that they must have toiled in vain. Perhaps unkindness made them so. Oh, win them back again. Speak gently. 'Tis a little thing dropped in the heart's deep well. The good, the joy which it shall bring, eternity will tell. So we'll reap the benefits as well as the consequences of our speech. And eternity, all of time will tell the karmic reaction to that speech. The third factor, cultivate supportive, uplifting, heartfelt, encouraging speech. Compassionate speech, speech that creates harmony and goodwill. Refrain from malicious, slanderous, abusive speech. The Buddha said, this is the speech that destroys friendships, malicious, slanderous, abusive speech. We could also say it's the speech that destroys families, communities, and even nations. It's the speech we seem to be living in the middle of so often days. The fourth factor, practice speech that is useful, meaningful, balanced, and with good timing. Do not engage in idle talk and gossip. Deliver this speech to another at a time they can stop to hear and in a place conducive to listening. In the book I started out with, Joseph Goldstein presents an exercise. For a week, don't talk about a person who isn't present. So don't talk about a third person who isn't there when you're talking to someone. And Joseph says he tried to do that, and it immediately eliminated 90% of his speech. I had the same result when I tried it. I didn't do it for a week, though. I lasted about a day, and it was a very quiet day for me. So it's a good exercise to play around with, recommended highly. Ayya Khema, a noted Buddhist practitioner and scholar, reminds us of the Buddha's comments on wise speech. If you know anything that is hurtful and untrue, don't say it. That is hurtful and untrue, don't say it. If you know anything that's helpful and untrue, don't say it. If you know anything that is hurtful and true, don't say it. If you know anything that is helpful and true, find the right time to say it. So I see how all of these suggestions are reinforcing pause. Don't blurt And I am so good at blurting. It's so much fun. It just jumps right out of my mouth, but pause. Recognize what you're putting out there. And 3/4 of the time, don't say it. Again, urging us towards more quiet and less blurting. In the Supasita Sutta, after the Buddha presents a talk, a teaching on being well-spoken, the Venerable Vangisa rises from his seat, inspired to speak, and expresses his understanding. Speak only that speech that neither torments oneself nor does harm to others. Speak only endearing speech, speech that is welcomed. Speech, when it brings no evil to others, is pleasant. And as with so much of the Dharma, the core here is do no harm to myself or to others through language, through words, through speech. There's a quote I use in talking about stigmatizing language sometimes. If you want to kill something, call it a weed. If you want to nurture and grow something, call it a flower. It's just the change of words, and we respond so differently to that. And we could probably all list characteristics of what we intuitively know is wise speech and what is unwise speech. Speech that is wise is not harsh, not condemning, not divisive, not blaming, not shaming, not judgmental, not othering, and we can go on and on. We get it. We know it up here. We know it in our heads. Doesn't mean that it's easy to practice. At least not for me, it isn't. I say unwise words on some regular basis, on a daily, if not hourly basis. The words I say to myself, the harsh, the critical, the judgmental words that land so hurtfully in my heart, that are lacking in any compassion and kindness, as Bill and Susan ongoingly remind us in the practice. Kinder, please, more compassionate, please, as to others, to myself, as to myself, as to others. And as to others, Thich Nhat Hanh recommends, if you are in conflict with someone, the first thing you should do is seek to understand them deeply. And this requires wise effort and wise intention and wise view and all of the practices of the Eightfold Path. This involves listening deeply, not just with my ears and my head, but with my heart and my whole being, as Catherine and Jay talked about. Looking deeply from wise view of mindfulness. Thich Nhat Hanh says you will see their suffering and you will not want to harm them, punish them, or make them suffer anymore. You will accept them as they are and try to help them. That is how understanding helps love to be possible. And love also helps understanding to deepen. Understanding and love are interdependent. Love is made of understanding, and understanding is made of love. Understanding is made of listening deeply, hearing deeply, and speaking with the intention of compassionate release from suffering. All of these things inter-are. When we practice one, we practice all the others. And as in the story of the master and the skeptic, let's really appreciate the power of compassionate and healing speech. Thank you so much for your kind listening.